Okay, today we have a Sony DVP-SR210P. It's a CD DVD player, real simple one. It's plugged in, but we get nothing. Nothing on the screen. Doesn't open, doesn't turn on. So something's wrong. Power supply or something. So let's take it apart, find out what the problem is. Something like this, it's so cheap that really it's not usually worth fixing, but if it's something simple, we'll definitely see what we can do. So inside, there's really not much to it, is there? You have the power supply there. That's pretty much everything else. And I'm not seeing on the power supply, it looks like the power comes in and is always outputting, I think that says 5 volts. Let's do this. Let's plug it in. Now I'm assuming that it's 5 volts DC. And I'm going to have to find a way and we're getting nothing. I'm picking up nothing. Alright, let's make sure that the... Alright, so power's getting into it. It's about 118 volts. Perfect. And with this disconnected, let's just make sure we get absolutely nothing coming out of it. Alright, so let's unplug it. What we always do is just do a visual inspection, make sure that there's no burnt traces, make sure that all these caps look fine, nothing is swollen. I don't see any signs of shorting, or none of the traces are lifted or cooked, so this actually looks perfect. Well, one thing I notice here, this is a fuse. Now if we flip it over and take a look, we get nothing on that. So that's the problem. I can almost guarantee, well, that's the reason it's not getting power, but why did the fuse blow? So let's try this. Let's get rid of this. Get this out of here. What I want to do is actually inject 5 volts into this board here. And I'm going to plug that back in because that gives me a way to actually put power to it. So we're going to put positive 5 in there. Or actually, let's do it over here to keep them separated. Because what I want to do is, if this popped, if this fuse popped, I want to make sure that it wasn't because of a surge. And if it was because of a surge, I want to make sure that it blew before it got to blow out anything on this board. I'm not Louis Rossman, so I'm not going to be doing anything over there. Nope. Looks like we're getting power. Let me unplug that. Can't plug anything into that side. Oop. Power light came on. And we have life. Okay, so let's do this. Let's try to play a CD. I have my YouTube approved music here. Let's plug this all in first. Yep, and I got a picture on the TV. Probably can't see that from the angle, but it does say DVD player and, you know, the generic menus. Nothing exciting. Loading. Play would help. Now, I don't have the CD or the remote for this, but that at least tells me that it's working. There's menus coming up on the screen, so I'm happy with that. At least we know that board is good. So let's fix the power supply. Let's make sure that that's working, or let's get that working and make sure that it's okay. All right, now what I'm going to do is since we think this, well, we know the fuse is bad because we measured it. First I'm going to take the fuse out, and then I'm going to make a solder bridge across those two connections. Okay, so the part is out. Very sloppy solder bridge. It's pretty far apart, so I don't even know if that's going to work. I have to use a wire. Oh, I think we got it. Alright, so now that that's there, hopefully it's not, yeah, it's not. I didn't want it shorting against the bottom of it. Now I am putting one of these in just to hold it in place. Plug it in there. So let's plug that in. And hopefully this doesn't explode because there is a short in the power supply, but we'll find out. So it's plugged in. We get nothing. We are getting 5 volts out. Oh, there's the power. I guess it just takes a minute to boot up. Open. There you go. There you go. Let's try this again. Let's just make sure there's no buzzing or... So it's working. So now if I really cared, I'd pull that power supply out and not even pull it out, just measure it with an oscilloscope and see what the waveform looks like. Make sure it's just a flat 5 volts DC. But I really don't care because it seems to work. It's a cheap DVD player, and from what I'm seeing and hearing, it seems to work just fine. So we're going to go with this. Okay, so what I have to do now is find a replacement fuse. Okay, so I found one. Found it out of an old laptop power supply that I don't even know what it went to. This was already opened, and I keep a bunch of old boards for parts. If you're going to be replacing these, whether it be this type of fuse or it's a glass type fuse, you want to stick with the rating of the original fuse or lower. Now the problem with going lower is it's going to blow much easier. And you don't want that because you don't want it failing for absolutely no reason. You can't go higher because then you're defeating the whole purpose of that fuse being there. Okay, so that's in. Yeah, it's just not worth it, you know, the headache of, you know, some people just, and I'll admit, I'm as guilty as the next person. There's certain pieces of equipment that I bypass the fuse on. But those are the ones that I usually are doing because I use it once in a blue moon, and I'm right there while I'm using it. I don't leave it. You know, something like this, you leave plugged in, you take the DVD out, it sits plugged in for the rest of the day, night, its life, and you know, you're at work, you know, you can't just, you want to make sure that this is going to be safe, and it's not going to burn your house down while you're away. Let's double check again. Yep, there it is. I don't know why this has like a really long boot time. Yep, there it is. So for a few minutes this thing got fixed. Now, like I said before in the beginning of this video, putting a lot of money into something like this is just not worth it. As much as I hate having disposable electronics and everything else, you know, I'm not going to be the one to save the day by keeping one of these from the landfill. But I don't know if you can see that. It is coming up on the screen just fine. Okay, so we diagnosed that it's the power supply. We did that because we measured the output while it was plugged in. There's no switches going to it, so it's always live, and there was 0 volts coming out of it. So we put 5 volts to the main board. It fired up and worked. So then we knew that everything else seemed to be okay. We had to fix the power supply, and instead of having to use expensive equipment, really just needed to use a multimeter, and we're able to find out that the fuse was blown, replace the fuse, and now it's back up and running. So there you go, it's all fixed.